Today's Warthunder video, I'm going to be discussing what I believe the game needs to improve in 2025. We'll cover new game modes, changes to the event structure, fixes for CAS, and much more. Let's get started. From talking to other Warthunder players, one of the most common suggestions for improving Warthunder is introducing new game modes. However, when you ask for specifics, you rarely get concrete solutions. The ideas that do come up often include adding a rush game mode, which is similar to Battlefield, increasing map sizes to allow for more objectives, or introducing air and ground enduring confrontation mode. The challenge with expanding game modes is that Warthunder is a PvP focused game. In PvP, the idea balance is for both teams to feel like they have roughly a 50% chance of winning. That's how Gaijin even feels about adding new game modes, because even in 2018, there was people asking for new game modes for Warthunder, and Kirill Yudinsev actually came out and talked about adding new game modes and why they don't do it to just random battles, and you normally see game modes tested through events and other things like that. But overall, I would definitely recommend listening to this next part of the video because it is very insightful to see how Gaijin actually thinks about these new game modes.
The thing is that it's rather difficult to introduce new game modes to random battles because we want them to be fair and balanced. This makes it quite challenging. Everything should be balanced, right? If we want changes to be so, to make fair game modes, especially the asymmetric ones that a lot of players want, if we want it to be engaging and fair, it's much more difficult than to make a separate event that inherently has limitations like what kind of vehicles are allowed, how many players are in, etc. We never test new game modes and new mechanics in random battles. We don't want to break it. We do it in our events or during tournaments, or like now, in World War.
Now, for example, let's take the rush game mode, which is the one that's very similar to Battlefield, where one team is attacking while the other defends. In Warthunder, attackers are generally at a disadvantage because pushing objectives is way harder than holding them. If defenders have like a 70% win rate, while attackers are sitting at like 30% win rate, which means that they're most likely going to get spawn trapped on their very first objective, and they're not going to be winning as many games. And once people start getting on the attacking team, they'll probably just leave and try to get into another game because, well, it's not really going to go that well for them. So that's basically why you have to have game modes, which are going to be very equal to each other on both teams. If not, you're going to have one side which is very much favored. And even now within Warthunder, you have maps which sides are favored, which means that it's not always a 50-50 split through the middle when it comes to actually winning and doing good within battles. Interestingly enough, Warthunder actually used to have a very similar game mode to this, where it was called Break, where both teams would fight over two objectives that they would capture, and once you captured one objective, you would then push to spawn forward for that team, which means that they'd be closer to the next objective. In theory, this basically sounds like it's going to be like a good game mode because, well, both teams are defending, both teams are attacking at the exact same time, which means it's kind of balanced. But in practice, what very much happened is people would figure out where the spawn was going to be next, and they'd go set up for that spawn and start spawn trapping because, well, Warthunder players are going to be Warthunder players and they've won a bunch of kills, RP, SL, and they don't really care about the objectives themselves. So that was basically the problem with that whole entire game mode, is that you would have some times of where people go spawn trap, and then you'd have issues of people getting into the actual death zone because they're not able to move away after a objective is captured. So it was very much a game mode which had inherent flaws with it, and why it was removed from Warthunder in general. Now switch it over to air. Regarding air RBEC, now the problem with air RBEC is there's really not a concrete reason of why it's never been added back to the game. I assume there's a bunch of balancing reasons. It's probably issues with it. You have probably server issues, queue times, including like the regular RB mode. So you definitely have a bunch of things that could actually impact this if it come back to the game. Now the thing that I feel like is most likely hindering it the most is the balance issue. And the reason I say that is because if you go play Sim right now, there's definitely a inherent balance when it comes to both sides of each team. Especially if you're playing at top tier right now, I assume it just follows the same meta of whichever side is doing the best. We'll have more players while the other side is getting shot down left and right because, well, people want to be on a winning team, which is always going to be an issue with a Warthunder. And once you do this sort of thing, especially if they introduce the same, like I assume people want the exact same thing that Simulator has, except for you have third person view. That's basically what I assume people want our ARBEC to be. So it's going to have inherent problems, probably why it's never been brought back in any sort of official fashion. You also have the issues of people abusing this sort of mode in Simulator already, so why would you add another mode where people can abuse it and they would be doing the same thing but in third person? So that's my opinion on it. I feel like it definitely could come back for weekends or something like that, but overall I do understand why it's probably not come back, at least at this point. So for my take on the whole game mode issue, at least for the PvP side, is that I feel like it's going to be very hard to balance no matter what you put in. game. Like, PvP is inherently imbalanced, especially for a asymmetrical game, which Warthunder already is, and basically it's going to be very hard to surpass what we already have when its current setup of game modes that we currently have. Instead, I feel like Gaijin should overall focus more on the PvE side of these sort of things. But at least on the PvE side, things can be very unsymmetrical, or just for events that really don't matter, like the submarine event, I think is really cool. But whenever you add something for PvE, you can make it unsymmetrical like crazy, and then you can also make it to where it's just unfair, and you can challenge people to do well, and it doesn't feel that bad because, well, it's a PvE environment, so you're not playing against other people. And like a very good example of this is Tarkov. Like, if you've seen what Tarkov has done, they went from like a PvP game to where you have the option of playing PvE, and I feel like for a lot of people that is just where they're at now. And I feel like for War Thunder, while yes, it's going to be, I would say it should be harder to grind in a PvE mode, at the same time it would be a great place for people to just go experience a new thing, because people could make missions for it, people could do different things. You could have even like a PvE mission of where you're in a bomber formation with your bomber, and your whole job is to go bomb an objective, and you're able to spade some of the bombers in War Thunder, like the Wellingtons. They're vehicles which are just very poor at being bombers, and it would be very cool to see that sort of thing added into the game. But overall, I feel like while PvE events would probably be the easiest way to give a new light within the game modes themselves, I don't think they should ever surpass what PvP can give you when it comes to research or anything like that, because once you do that, you kill the game. Like, easy said is done. Like, once PvE takes over, that's whenever the game is just done from a PvP point of view, and many people still like the PvP portion of the game itself. So to finish it off before we go on to the event structure, I feel like the best way to combat the new game mode issue is adding new things to the game mode itself. So for example, with the last update for War Thunder, we had the ammo boxes, which gives a new playstyle for many vehicles within the game. I feel like that sort of thing is going to be way better to spice up the game itself by just introducing new objectives, new things to do, new equipment, and that should make it a lot better to play overall. But I definitely want to hear your guys' opinion in the comments about this sort of thing, because I know for a fact that some of you are going to agree, some of you are going to disagree with this whole thing, and I feel like it's going to be a very good subject to just talk about in general, because I really want to see where everyone is at when it comes to the new game modes and what they would like to see within the game. But yeah, let's get on to the event structure, and let's talk about the new events which had happened over 2024. So for the new events for 2024, I've not really had many issues completing them. I normally just skip the naval ones because, well, I'm just not really interested in them like that much. But I have noticed that only about 5 out of the 11 event vehicles that's been released in 2024 have been truly unique or exciting, in my opinion. A huge solution that I feel like would actually help with this new event system that actually came out is being able to trade your vehicle coupons for older event vehicles or exclusive ones, even like the Panther II, the Tiger 105. It's going to be very similar to the Battle Pass system. You would have to restrict the trade by vehicle type, naval for naval, ground for ground, etc. But the main reason I really want to do this is because whenever there's an event vehicle right now that you're just not interested in, you have a really huge problem. You don't really want to do it, so you might want to do it to sell it. But at the same time, it would be really cool if you're able to still do the event, but then actually get a event vehicle that you've missed out on, or just vehicles that you missed in general. I feel like this would be very positive. I know there's some issues with it though. For example, if you want to take the War Thunder market into effect, it would definitely kill some of the prices, but they could do some exceptions. You could do like the recent year's event vehicle or something like that, so you're not able to go get like an E100 or an i7. But I feel like it'd be very cool to have something like this. Definitely would be something that needs to be more or less addressed more from Gaijin themselves, of what kind of restrictions they want to have with it. But overall, I feel like this would be a definitely good thing to add, because let's just say that you have an event vehicle for a naval boat that you don't really want, but you really wanted one of the older event vehicles for naval. You can go play that and you can get that event vehicle very easily. Same thing for ground, same thing for air, and it makes it to where you're not just grinding out an event vehicle that you don't want, and then also at the same time you're able to get something that maybe you just missed out on and you're not able to get it again. So overall, I think this is a really good idea, but at the same time, I highly doubt Gaijin will ever do it, just because it will definitely mess with the market prices, but they can definitely put some huge restrictions to it to make it to where it doesn't impact it as much. But overall, this is a really good idea. What do you guys think? So now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which I think is affecting War Thunder heavily, especially at top tier right now, which is going to be CAS. In my opinion, in the lower tiers up to 9.3, CAS really isn't that problematic, with the occasional outlier like a helicopter outranging the SPA, but the real issue is how easy it is to spawn in a CAS, which affects the whole game. Often a single kill and an assist can get you in a CAS plane, and at that point, there are very few players in SPA or fighters to counter you, which means that you have pretty much free reign over the battlefield. I feel like the easiest solution to this issue is definitely increasing CAS spawn costs for the first 2 minutes of a match, which makes it harder to get in CAS right away. After that, spawn costs should return to normal. Additionally, players who counter CAS with SPA and fighters should be rewarded more, because as of right now, it's generally not advantageous for you to go after enemy CAS, just because the amount of RP and SL that you get from them is very much underappreciated, and then also the amount of score you get especially during event time, is also not as great as well. So sometimes CAS can just run wild because, well, it's better off to shoot at another tank than it is to shoot at airplanes, because it really doesn't give you that much when it comes to score or reward. And for top tier, it's even worse, because right now, at least in ground, it is just turned into ARB, because people can jump into a plane very, very quickly, and then they have so much advancement when it comes to their aircraft in general that they can just nuke everything on the ground. And the problem with that is that aircraft that have advanced so much when it comes to their guiding munitions, when it comes to their chaff and flares, when it comes to pretty much everything about them has improved. The thing about the ground forces is that many vehicles have just not changed at all, or even gotten worse. For example, with the Sackless missile changes, many of the SPAs basically got to where they can't hit anything, especially the Rolands, especially all those vehicles which have very, very weak missiles. They're just basically worthless when it comes to spawning them in. And the problem with it is that you only have really one SPA that can counter many of these vehicles, and even that SPA has trouble with them, which is the Panzer. So right now, at least when it comes to Warthunder, if you're within a top tier match and you spawn into your F-15E or you spawn into your Su-34, you can run the game, because there's barely anything that can touch you, and there's barely anything that can do anything against you. The only reliable thing is jump into a fighter yourself and shoot Fox 3 missiles at them. But the funny thing about the F-15, and it's the one I'm going to use a good example on, it has AIM-120s too. So it can just fire them right back at you, shoot you down, and just because he shot first at you or he's seen you first, you're dead. And then he can just go around the battlefield shooting a bunch of tanks again. So right now, I feel like the only big solution to this sort of issue is that they just need to increase the battle rating of these problematic aircraft. The F-15E, the Su-34, the Su-25, all these vehicles which can outrange all of the SPA, or they just have missiles which can just completely overwhelm SPA, need to get moved up to 13.0, because right now with top tier, you have an issue of these planes being 12.7, at least for their ground battle rating, which means that the tanks, which are 12.0, which is the highest battle rating right now, they can see an unlimited amount of 12.7s because of how quantitative matchmaker works. If you don't know how quantitative matchmaker works, it's basically like this. If you're a 1.0 battle rating between the different battle ratings, you can only see 4 vehicles of that type in an up tier. So for example, a 11.7 right now technically can only see 4 Su-34s or F-15Es. Now for right now, if you play a 12.0 match, you can see an unlimited amount of them because they're only 12.7. So putting these vehicles up to 13.0 removes them completely from 11.7, and then also it makes it to where if you just want to play your 12.0 tanks without bringing in any of the extra CAS, you will only be able to see 4 of them, which is way more manageable than a whole team jumping into an Su-34 or a whole team jumping into an F-15E and dominating the battlefield itself. So I feel like this is the definitely thing that needs to happen right now, and it needs to happen very quickly. But since those vehicles are very, very new, I highly doubt that it's going to happen quickly at all. But this is the easiest solution as of right now. At least it gives you a little bit of a buffer zone if you want to play just tanks, but at the same time, it is definitely an issue that needs to be fixed, because it is incredibly annoying and a huge reason of why I personally do not want to play top tier as of right now. So now let's get on to internal modules. The addition of internal modules, to me at least, was a good change in my opinion. However, the inconsistencies is what I'm very annoyed at right now when it comes to different vehicles. So right now, for example, you have the PLZ-05 and the Sholef, which are both SPHs, which have their autoloader modeled, which means that if it gets damaged, they are having to repair the autoloader before they can fire again. In the meanwhile though, you have vehicles like the Type 99, which were added in a older update than those vehicles were, which do not have its autoloader modeled, which means that you can shoot it and it just passes through the tank because it doesn't have it, and you're able to still shoot. So in my opinion, my problem with this whole thing right now is that you have inconsistencies with different vehicles, and they definitely need to be addressed, because if you have vehicles which have these internal modules, they're at a clear disadvantage from vehicles which do or which don't have them. So it definitely needs to be put on the head that many of these vehicles need to be actually updated very soon, because it's very annoying whenever you have a vehicle which is the same battle rating as you, the same type of vehicle as you, and it's just better because of game mechanics which have not been updated to it. So yeah, what do you guys think about this? I personally think it's a huge issue, especially when it comes to the 7.7 area, because you have some vehicles which have it, some vehicles that don't, and they basically have more ways to damage them, while others can get shot and do not much damage at all. So yeah, what do you guys think about the internal module? So lastly, let's talk about battle ratings, which has been something that they actually introduced this year, which was the separate battle ratings for planes in ground forces and in air. So the thing about it is that the top tier of the game, in around 9.0-ish, somewhere in there, you have the separation. But as of right now, a bunch of vehicles at low tier and mid tiers do not have this separation. You do have some of them like the Wyvern and the Yak 9K, which were 2 vehicles that were definitely overperforming for what they were doing, but this needs to be expanded to more vehicles like the P-47s, the P-51s, the BF-109s, you need to have this separation, because as of right now, you have a ton of vehicles which do overperform as a CAS plane, but they do not get put up into their battle rating or their correct battle rating. So which means you have a bunch of vehicles which are doing extremely well. So I feel like they need to definitely like do more separations through the battle ratings. It seems very weird that they not already did this, because well, it's been about what, a year now coming up when this came into the effect. So definitely needs to be addressed, definitely needs to be put in, because it is something that is hindering a lot of vehicles from doing well, and also hindering a lot of overpowering vehicles from just going up in battle rating. So my conclusion from all this is that I think these are the areas within Warthunder which definitely need to be addressed or improved. What do you guys think? I know there's going to be a lot of like different things that you guys think as well should be improved when it comes to Warthunder. Many of you probably talk about the grind. Many of you probably will talk about different things like having your armor increased or something on your Abrams. So these are my top issues within Warthunder right now, and hopefully they're able to be fixed within 2025. So yeah, if you guys like this type of video, remember to like and sub to the channel. It is always appreciated, and thank you guys for watching, and see you guys in the next Warthunder video.